Hey guys, welcome to PB Garage. I'm Sean. Today we're going to have a look at starting to do what I've been waiting for quite a long time on this motor. Now that I've got my cylinder heads on and everything, we're going to start installing my XSPower turbo kit onto the motor and getting it ready to put in the car. So stick around. Those of you that have been watching the channel long enough might remember that when I first got my boxes from XSPower that was supposed to contain everything I needed to install this kit, I was actually missing a few parts, and if you want to have a look back at my unboxing video of that stuff, I'll include a link just up here so that you guys can check that out. Now I've got these boxes here that came in a couple weeks after I did that video. This should contain the parts that I was missing. So we'll start this out by opening these guys up. I've been looking forward to opening these for a while and making sure everything's there. Now it's been quite a bit of time that these have been sitting here, so hopefully I've got everything I need, because I'm way too late now to go back and be like, hey, you forgot to send me stuff. So I've got a bunch of injectors here. These are, I can't remember what flow they were supposed to be, but these would be the ones that came with the kit. They look nice. I mean, I wouldn't know what I'm really looking at other than they look like injectors. So 6 of those, very important for this build. And here's my ECU. Oh, yeah, there we go. XSPower. This is my tuned ECU, which I'm gonna have to retune because I've got different cams since I'm running the 2.8 heads, but that's gonna be a good place to start from, hopefully. We've got a whole bunch of silicone couplers and hoses, whole bunch of T-bolt clamps here, a few little hose clamps like the worm gear style hose clamps, and then here we've got my boost pipes. I guess you would call those, is that what you would call these, boost pipes? And they're pretty heavy. They feel substantial, that's kind of nice. I was expecting like thin aluminum. Oh yeah, that feels hefty. Nice, looks like it's got a little bung here. Would that be for water meth injection, I wonder? If that's the case, that makes my life easy, because I was thinking about running some meth on the car. These seem to be a pretty nice piece. I'm fairly impressed with them. We'll see how everything goes together when we test fit everything, but that's part of the adventure, right? There's another nice boost pipe, my, I guess, meth bung there. Okay, I've got downpipe gaskets, which I'm definitely not going to use these like pressed waffle things. I'm going to get some steel ones, but good to know that I have them. See what I've got here. I've got, turbo hardware. I've got a whole bunch of copper crush washers, some bolts. I've got some fire rings for my turbos here. So that's all very important hardware to have. Got a whole bunch more silicone couplers. These ones are blue, so I'll get some blue, some black, I guess. That's how I'm gonna roll. More T-bolt clamps, that's pretty cool. And then let's see what we got here. So these would be my inlets, larger diameter inlets for the turbos. And these are aluminum, fairly light duty. I mean, I gotta say, like the finish is not bad. Like I've definitely paid a lot of money for some parts that were not nearly as nice as this from reputable or so-called reputable manufacturers. So the cost for what you get, at least so far, having not installed anything and not knowing how everything's going to go together, looks pretty decent for this XSPower stuff. You know, it's not full race, but it certainly could be worse. There's another inlet there. And then these would be my little longer inlets, upper inlets, or whatever you want to call them, that come off of my Y pipe on the top of the motor and then go down either side of the motor. I guess kind of like, I'm not sure. I probably have that on the wrong side, but. Oh, look what else I have. Some steel downpipe gaskets. These are slightly different shape. And I guess the reason why I've got two sets, I've got this set of steel ones and this set of the pressed ones here, is just because depending on the turbos that you're using, I guess there's a couple different flange patterns on the back of the turbo there with a couple different downpipe options. And I don't know if that's from the OEM, if that's like a difference between the APB and the BEL motors. I'm not totally sure like which turbos have which housings and which downpipes made up to them. I know that there is a difference in sort of like early versus late, so I'm guessing it's APB versus BEL difference. But it's good to know that I have both of these sets. I'm not sure, I think the backs of these turbos look like they're gonna take these sort of egg-shaped gaskets, so if that's the case, I've got these metal ones. That's really nice. I won't have to go and buy some more. So that's handy. There's my last pipe here. There we go. I mean, seriously, like, not such a bad looking piece. I will be very curious to do a leak test once everything's together and see what works well together and what doesn't. But so far, I gotta say, this kit, for the money, probably a pretty good value. So I'm gonna skip doing a recap of just all the parts that I've got because hopefully you guys have watched my unboxing video from, I don't know how long ago it was now, probably close to a year ago. So if you guys have seen that unboxing video, now you've seen those parts that I just got, you have a good idea of everything that comes with the kit. As I put all the parts onto this motor, I'm going to talk about, you know, what I'm missing in terms of hardware, if anything, what I need to change or modify to make it fit. That's the whole goal of this. Now, one thing I want to talk about real quick is I had a lot of people suggesting that I should take the center sections of these turbos to a turbo rebuilder and have them balanced. And at the time I thought that was a really good idea, but I've since decided that no, the whole point of this build was to know whether you can order this kit from XSPower and receive everything and install it properly onto the motor and run it as is. So I'm not going to go ahead and do any extra sort of machining processes or checks or things like that. I'm just going to install the parts as I've received them and we're going to test it out. If stuff breaks, if it blows up, that's part of the test and that's what we're here to figure out. So hopefully everything works and stays together and does what it should. We're going to find out together, okay? So last video I uploaded, I was installing these cylinder heads, and since then I've obviously put my oil pans on and done the timing belt. Tons of videos out there on doing the timing belt. Did the water pump as well and the thermostat. And Barry actually had a really good video that he posted of installing these oil pans. So if you aren't too sure about that process, go have a look at that. Right now we're going to skip ahead. We're going to start putting those exhaust manifolds on. So one thing I'm going to do differently from what came with the kit is I'm not going to use this stamped exhaust gasket here for the manifold. I'm going to use an OEM style gasket, a multi-layer steel one. I've got new hardware. All of this stuff came with sort of a rebuild kit that I had for these cylinder heads, which included valve cover gaskets and a bunch of other stuff. Now, one thing I did notice when I just kind of test fit this is how loose that manifold is. You know, the holes kind of leave a lot of room for play there, and I just wanted to compare that to a factory one. So here's the factory manifold, and you can see right away like how it doesn't move hardly at all. There's very, very little play, and that tells me that, you know, with that XSPower manifold, it might be a little bit tricky. I'm going to try and just center the hardware in the holes and then hope that that lines up. Maybe what I can do is I can compare. If I look at my gasket here and I lay it on the flange, if I kind of line those up, the holes in my flange not really centered with the gasket there, so that means as I go to put this on, okay, So if I try and keep those centered and have a look, my gasket holes are towards the bottom of the XSPower manifold, which means that then, okay, when I go to put this on, I'm going to push the manifold up against the head a little bit, try to keep it centered in this direction, but up against the head. And hopefully that'll mean that the ports are going to be lined up as good as they can be. See, that's the tricky thing about having this ability to move this around. Like if I move this to one corner, now my ports may or may not be lined up properly on the inside. So I'm going to center them because the gasket looked like it was centered, but the holes were at the bottom relative to this flange when the ports were lined up. I know that probably sounds complicated, but we're going to do this and hope for the best. Now, one of the things that came up a lot in the comments on the other videos, or just to people I've been talking about, people have been saying, oh, ditch the XSPower manifolds because they're junk and they crack. And I want to give them a try, because the thing about that is I don't know if people are installing them properly. I don't know if they're using this gasket that comes with the kit and it's blowing out, causing a leak, and they just assume that that means that the manifold's cracked because they hear an exhaust leak or what. So we're going to give this a try and we're going to find out together whether this manifold's going to crack. Okay, so I've run some of these nuts down with a ratchet just loosely, like they're not torqued or anything yet, but one of the hiccups that I kind of noticed was right over here. If we have a look, you can see these three nuts here, pretty tough to get at. It's tough to get down on them because this pipe's in the way, so I can't get down with a ratchet and an extension or a socket. There's really no room even between that nut and the pipe here to get a socket on it. So I'm gonna have to spin those in with just a ratcheting wrench here, if I can even get that on. That one works okay. Okay, so I've got those nuts seated, and now I'm gonna torque everything down. I'm gonna do a crisscross pattern, and I've got my torque wrench here set to 25 Newton meters or 18.5 foot-pounds. I'm gonna torque most of the hardware down with this, but for those three nuts that are tough to get at, like I tried a couple different combos of like quarter drive stuff or whatever. I couldn't get anything on there. So I'm just gonna have to use my wrench and my calibrated wristometer here and try to get as close to 25 Newton meters as I can. Click, click. Okay, so this guy's good and tight. I'm gonna flip the motor over, do the exhaust manifold on the other side. Okay, so something interesting is I was trying to install this exhaust manifold on the driver's side. I noticed that the manifold was actually hitting this little casting here, this little thread for the bracket that holds the inlets to the turbo, and I think it holds a little coolant pipe as well. Basically, so this is the bracket here. What I'm gonna try to do I'd like to still be able to use this bracket, so what I'm gonna try to do is just come in and grind this down so that I can get a little bit more clearance to get this in a bit. I might take a bit of material off the bracket here as well. And then hopefully that'll allow me to, because right now this exhaust manifold is sitting down and I want it to be sort of up on the studs there to try and line up the exhaust ports. And I can't because it's hitting. So if I knock that down and take some material off of this, hopefully that will give me enough clearance for that. And at the same time, I can still run this whole bracket. If not, I'll just knock that down more, and then I'll cut this bracket off and just have the one bolt there, and it'll have to do the best it can with just that. Okay, so I've knocked down my little mounting spot here, made some clearance, and I bent my bracket up a little bit. So I just curved it a little bit to make up that difference of the material I removed from this spot. And I also removed quite a bit of material from here just to gain a little bit of clearance there as well. Now I'm going to put the bracket on before I put the exhaust manifold on, just because once that manifold's on, this hardware is really tough to see. I'm probably gonna have to knock some of this hardware down as well, but I'm gonna get started and see how much I need to remove. Getting pretty close there. I think I'm gonna have to take that bolt out and just machine it down a little bit. Fun stuff, huh? This is the point where everybody on the internet goes, you should have just cut everything off. Okay, a few attempts later at restyling my bolt there, giving it an extreme makeover. I think I've given myself plenty of clearance now. I can tighten that down before I tighten this manifold down, just so it's not in the way. Excellent. Everything's tight. Manifold's on. In here, I've got at least a good couple of millimeters there, you can see, of clearance to my stuff, which should be plenty. What do you guys think? Should we throw some turbos on here this episode or wait for the next one? Let's do it this time. All right, so our left-hand side turbo here is the one that doesn't have the snout pointing forward. Now, I noticed that on my turbo, I've got a bunch of holes here. I don't know if that's just different models or different manifolds or what the story is there, but I'm hoping that enough of these line up that I can mount this turbo. So, the kit comes with, we can see here, comes with these, again, stamped little gaskets. We're not going to use those guys. What I am going to use for a gasket is these fire rings here. Of course, there goes one of my copper washers. But these fancy little steel crush washers here, these fire rings, are what we're going to mount on the turbo, and you can see here. Now, I've never really used these before, but you can see I've got a nice groove there. This guy should fit right into that groove without too much effort, or maybe with a bit of effort. I'm not sure what I can do to get that to sit in there better. Doesn't seem to be quite big enough. Just seems like I'm missing about 1 millimeter of inside diameter on this fire ring for it to sit down into that channel nicely. I don't know if I'm supposed to heat these up, if they grow quite a bit under heat, and if that's what I'm supposed to do to get them to fit in there properly. If you guys know, like, let me know in the comments. I'm probably just gonna order up a set of these that are like from a better brand, not the ones that came in the kit. And give those a try, see if they fit any better, or see if any of my buddies have some fire rings kicking around that I could just try. And I think I'm gonna end the video there, guys. Good amount of progress today. We got those nice exhaust manifolds on the car. Really excited to see whether those hold up once we start boosting and making a bit of power and making a lot of heat. And if you guys are enjoying this kind of content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna try and get a video up every week with progress on this thing because I really want to get it done and in the car, and I'm really excited to drive this thing, and I'm really excited to show you guys whether this XSPower kit holds up or not. So hit that subscribe button. You know, if anything you guys do, like interacting with our stuff, really helps. So yeah, that's about it. We'll catch you guys next time. All right, later.